Okay, I think everybody should be here now. Welcome everybody to our second virtual meetup. Just a quick note, if you have your camera on, please go ahead and turn your camera off as we will be starting the panel portion of this. It'll just be myself and John and Aaron, and also keep yourself muted for the time being. And here in about a half hour, we will roll into our roundtable discussions. And at the roundtable discussion part of this is when you can turn your camera on and turn your mic on as well, and you can interact with everybody. Welcome to the virtual meetup off premises. For those of you, some of you, I think, participated in our last virtual meetup. We held one a few months ago for fast casual operators. This one, we're trying to focus specifically on off-premises innovation and talking about what that looks like during the pandemic and how that's obviously playing a huge role in all of your businesses currently. My name is Sam Okus. I'm the editor of QSR, the editorial director of Food News Media. You begin lots of emails from me. I'm really excited to have you guys here. Really excited for our panelists to join us as well. Before we jump into the panel and the roundtable, I first wanted to say a big thank you to 86 Repairs for partnering with us on this event, and wanted to go ahead and invite Daniel Estrada from 86 Repairs to share a few words. So Daniel, I will hand it over to you.
Hey, Sam. Thanks a lot for having us. We're proud to be sponsoring the event again and appreciate all the great content and stuff that you guys have been doing at QSR. And welcome to everyone. Excited to talk with some of you in the breakouts and hear about how you're navigating the new world of restaurants. Just a quick intro on 86 Repairs. We manage the end-to-end repair and maintenance process for restaurant operators. And we do that without having to buy new software or hire more people. This year especially, a lot of operators have been looking for ways to cut costs, rethinking their facility strategies. And so being not another software tool or third-party maintenance company, the process and the technology that we've been building over the last couple of years is completely new in the industry. So even if you have an in-house team, we can probably save you some money on R&M across your locations. So if you're curious about how it works, please connect with our team after the event and we'd be happy to chat more with you. I'll kick it back to you, Sam. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. All right. As I mentioned, I know several of you joining this event participated in our last one. But for those of you who don't, just a quick idea of what we're going to be doing today and why we're doing it. We have traditionally hosted fast casual meetups, which have been in-person happy hour networking events. We've been doing those across the country for the last 5 years and had a great time doing it. Had several on the schedule this year that unfortunately had to be canceled, of course, due to COVID. But we want to continue to build community and allow for some networking among the restaurant industry, even in this season. So that's what we are doing here. The whole purpose of this is really to connect with your peers and to learn from them. This is obviously an unprecedented crisis. You guys are about 8 months into this now and pretty seasoned and wizened, but there's still lots to learn. And this is an opportunity for you to learn from your peers and to connect with them. And so how this is going to go is we're going to start with a panel conversation between our panelists, whom I will introduce in just one moment. And then after our panel, we will roll into roundtable discussions of about 6 to 8 people in each group. That roundtable discussion is really going to be a great opportunity for everybody to talk about the challenges that you have going on, to share your perspective, to learn from each other. Because again, the whole point of this is just to meet people around the country who you maybe don't know, and to hear from them what they've got going on during the pandemic, and to learn from them and apply those lessons to your own business. While we are talking about off-premises innovation today, during the roundtable discussion, feel free to talk about whatever you want. I mean, ideally be restaurant related and related to your operations. But if you need to talk about labor, talk about labor. If you need to talk about leadership expansion, whatever it is, feel free to do that. We'll be talking about off-premises specifically in our panel, and some of you will also have a chance to have our panelists as your roundtable leaders, and you'll have a chance to be able to ask them questions as it relates to off-premises as well. Quick housekeeping notes before we jump into this. Again, keep your mic and your camera off until we get into the roundtables. Everybody's doing great so far. Also, if you see a grid of a bunch of different names, you can go to your video settings and you can set it to hide non-video participants, and you will see just the panelists for this portion of things. Also, if you would, please just go and hover over your name in the participants tab and go under more, and then go to rename and put your name and your brand name, because that would be helpful, I think, for folks to know who is present here, and they can you can interact with each other on the in the participants tab as well. The roundtables will be about 30 to 45 minutes. Make sure during those, please respect everybody's opinions and please respect everybody's right to speak. Those are meant to be just very informative and casual, but we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk as well. And finally, I will just note that there is a chat function in Zoom here too. I am going to leave my chat open, and if you have questions for our panelists in the next half hour, please go ahead and drop them in there, and I will try to ask those of our panelists, whom after all of that, I am finally happy to introduce. I am really thrilled to welcome Jonathon Relkin is the Director of Off-Premises for Chipotle, and Aaron Noveshen is the founder and CEO of Starbird. I'm sure most of you have heard of these guys and their work, their brands, and we're really excited to talk about off-premises innovation with the two of them. So thank you guys for joining us today. I'm going to jump into, I want to talk a little bit about what off-premises looked like for you guys before the pandemic. John, let's start with you. Everybody knows Chipotle and what Chipotle has going on, but you guys have been undergoing quite a transformation these last few years. What was off-premises? How did that factor into this transformation that's been going on?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I think when you think about Chipotle and where we were when the pandemic started, I think we were very far down the road of an entire digital transformation. Having built out our digital make lines, right? Basically a second line that was completely independent, created operational advantages that when everything changed, it really allowed us to pivot and really focus our marketing efforts on delivery, on order ahead, in a way that, frankly, before was just a part of what we were doing. So maybe it was a TV tag, or maybe it was a lightweight social activation, but really leaning into everything related to off-premise from really the entire company's perspective, free delivery and other campaigns, I think allowed us in many ways to accelerate at a time when I know was very, very difficult and a challenge for most. So I think having that sort of foundation laid really positioned us to frankly lean into this channel and be able to, at its peak, we were almost 70% of the business coming from delivery and order ahead, which had you told me that before this pandemic started, that those numbers would be even remote possibility, I would have never dreamed that to be the case.
Yeah, Aaron, how about you for Starbird? What did you have going on before the pandemic?
Oh, sure. Thanks also, Sam, for having me join the panel today. I look forward to speaking with some folks later. So Starbird was really founded with an omnichannel approach to off-premise from day one. So our focus was literally, we had an app and we had app ordering for pickup and even car delivery from the day we opened our doors. We have a very robust catering program, a lot of it driven by third-party partners, sort of that do catering a little differently, that they allow companies who aggregate orders from small tech companies, primarily in the Bay Area, and we could do in any one of our restaurants, say 250 orders before we open the doors, all done through non-traditional catering means. That was a big part of our sales. We were doing about 10% of sales that way pre-pandemic. We were in the cloud kitchen business. We had a cloud kitchen open, a first one from the middle of last year, and we had launched our first virtual brand, Starbird Wings, all prior to the pandemic happening. So we have always had a very strong focus on creating frictionless experiences for our guests. We're in super premium fast food, much of which is also off-premise. That 70% number that John is sharing, we were hovering around that number ourselves too, prior to a lot of the shutdowns. And so we've really been dedicated to allowing for meeting the customer where they want to meet us, whether it be delivery or ease of pickup, or catering, or through access through third-party delivery in the virtual brand space.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people about this idea that in some ways it's the timing of the pandemic almost couldn't have been better. I mean, it seems kind of weird to say, but the way you guys were set up for this, it just is so interesting how you guys had the tools available to you to prepare yourself for what the pandemic necessitated. But of course, there was some pivoting required too. John, I've been most interested in especially Chipotle's drive-through now. Suddenly embracing drive-through. I'm sure that's. I know that was something the Chipotle was part of the plans before the pandemic too. But I think you guys are really investing in that now. But what are some pivots you guys did, John, for Chipotle? How did you need to change things and kind of adapt the operation around everything that started in March?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chipotle's is a great example of where I think we see the future going. Right now, it's the number of Chipotle's that we have are still relatively small, certainly compared to the size of our chain. So I think that's where I believe. I mean, pandemic, no pandemic, like that was a direction that we were headed in. I think the pandemic has certainly accelerated how we think about that and ultimately what that means to the broader portfolio and really trying to accelerate that. But I think more maybe specifically to kind of the pivots that we made in the, really in the throes of the pandemic in the beginning, it really started with sort of, we're obviously a very large organization. We have a pretty diverse marketing team who focuses across lots of, whether it's brand, local, regional, et cetera. But really, when the pandemic started, it was really an incredible coming together and focus and really just singular alignment on how do we ultimately, and I like the way Aaron described it, meet our customers where they are and where they need us to be right now. And so, whether that was free delivery and then having television commercials and paid media and basically moving all of our assets and marketing into that space, to then focusing on expanding some of the digital capabilities that we have with things like contactless deliveries, being able to leave notes for your driver, to simple things like stickers on the bag that to seal the bag and give customers confidence in what they're actually receiving. And so I think it was just a kind of a full rethink of what our customer wants, needs, and expects. And ultimately, then putting together several actions to ultimately give that to them and begin to tell those stories and make everyone feel comfortable. I don't know about you guys, but in those first few weeks, it was like, who can you trust, and can I even take a package into my house? And obviously now, 8 months later, it's a very different equation than it was in the first month or two of when everything got kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Aaron, how about you for Starbird? I know you guys really kind of adapted the way you got food, especially through like curbside. You started doing some great you had some good ideas with how people pick up their orders and everything. Walk us through some of the changes you made.
Sure. We saw things coming a little bit, and I was doing a lot of review of what was going on overseas. I'd taken a look at what Starbucks was doing in China, like really taking a look at this in February and early March. And we decided pretty early on that things were going to be pretty radically changed. And we tried to be as preemptive as possible. We tried to simplify our message both internally and externally, just to make sure that everyone was on the same page. And we really had 3 tenets that we focused on immediately. One was people, the second was community, and the third was business health. And we really filtered every decision that we made in and around these 3 topics. And when it came to people, it really came down to safety, right? So the safety of our team members, and then the safety of our community and the people within our community. So I think it was on March 16th, we closed all of our dining rooms, pretty much ahead of most brands. We rewired our POS systems to the front doors of our buildings, and we printed up menu boards and put them on the outside. We had daily communication to our community, to our customers, to the guests we serve, and a lot of internal discussions, team meetings every single morning. So this was just a complete mobilization and focus on that safety first and foremost. The messaging around that was really important too. And it clearly resonated because we just got a ton of feedback from our guests that they felt safe, right? We were once again meeting them where they needed to be met, whether it be on pickup or on delivery, and took the right safety precautions and really like simply communicated what we were doing, the care we had for our team and the care we had for them, our guests. That was just like critically important. And once again, that communication needs to keep going. The numbers that we're seeing these days are not that promising, right? Things are big on the rise. We like to stay positive. We're a positive brand. We're serve positively delicious chicken, and we're optimistic about the future. But we also want to make sure that we care for our team and our community and continually reassure that for our guests. We still have not opened our restaurants. We're allowed now to do 25% in the San Francisco Bay Area. It'll go to 50% next month. We will choose likely to not open our dining rooms until we absolutely feel that we have to, probably weather permitting. Fortunately, we're in California and we'll get a little extra oxygen. We do keep our patios open today.
Aaron, tell me about catering. What's the status of that? Because it seems like that must have just dried up completely overnight. Has that come back at all?
Yeah, so it's really great question. So catering, as I mentioned, we were over 12% of sales. We're a fast food restaurant, right? You don't think about fast food restaurants providing catering, but we've come up with different packages and different things to serve the need states of our guests in the past that didn't exist before. So catering is definitely on the rise again today. We do have some partnerships again with folks like Forkable and other consolidators. We also have a ton of outreach to the hospital community, of which we donated, thousands and thousands of meals to. So we've built good relationships there, and we're getting catering orders from those folks. And then in particular, the biotech, anywhere where there are labs, there are people who are working and have to go on site. So we've targeted our catering in those areas. Well, we're certainly not 10% of business in that arena. And once again, and I didn't share this before, but we're up, almost 40% year on year. And I don't mean to say that to brag. It's like, it's been a real concerted effort to allow for these type of comps. And that's when we've lost 10% catering and 32% dining. We've made it up in our off-premise, in our delivery, and in our frictionless app integration. So, and catering is on the rise again. We have multiple catering orders every day from our restaurants, and we have a dedicated person who's doing outreach and sharing how we differentiate, how we can serve their needs. It takes a little bit more human touch right now and awareness of the different needs of different businesses that exist today, because they're really not the same. It's not the same dialogue.
Wow, 40% up. I'm not surprised that you're not opening your restaurants if you don't need to, if you're doing 40% up without. Let's talk about John, the customer experience. I know it's such a big deal. Obviously, this is the entire reason for being for your brands. And Chipotle, obviously, you guys have had 26 years, 27 years now, becoming part of the sort of collective conscience of Americans. And so obviously adapting to a new way of service is, there's some education that goes along with that, but you also want to make it a good experience if they're not walking into a Chipotle to sit down and have their food there. How can you create a great experience for the customer when it's off premises, and especially in kind of this day and age?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just when you think about sort of philosophically how we approach everything that we do, we really look at it like, how do we create a digital experience that is as good as our in-restaurant experience that millions and millions of people know and love. Before the pandemic, I think we had a huge awareness gap that we even offered delivery, for example, directly from our app and website. We had a very, very loyal base of users and continue to bring new users in. But I think this pandemic really changed the game in terms of just overall awareness about what we offer, and then ultimately how are we meeting the customer there. When we think about the experience itself, we really take an end-to-end view, and being multifaceted, right, in terms of offering delivery and pick order ahead from directly through our app, website, as well as third-party delivery partners. There are huge areas of sort of handshakes that need to happen along the process in order to deliver that experience, right? You don't own that end-to-end flow in the way that you really do when someone walks into your restaurant. And so I think it starts by really thinking about that experience from certainly a very digital experience lens, and sort of what happens at each stage of the process and what frankly could go wrong. And how do you either prevent that from going wrong, or at a minimum, certainly be proactive in reaching out to your customers so that I mean, nothing is worse than failing to deliver a large order of food, or you know, a delivery driver. Like, there are just so many things that could possibly go wrong from a technology perspective and a people and process perspective. That being clear about sort of how do you understand where those gaps are, where those failure points are, and then what are you going to do about it when those things happen, both in the moment and then also working to sort of close those or eliminate those, be it through, you know, technical improvements, improve relationships with third-party delivery companies, or whatever the case may be.
What are some of the learnings you've gotten from Chipotle? Because I feel like, you know, I know before you guys introduced Chipotle, I would hear from my friends, like, is Chipotle ever going to have drive-through? Because people just wanted Chipotle to have drive-through. But your drive-through is a little bit different than most drive-throughs, being a pickup window. And, you know, there's a technology component. You know, for those who are not used to a Chipotle and not used to going through drive-through for a Chipotle, how did you adjust people to understanding that experience?
Yeah, so in those areas that we have Chipotlanes, we've done a handful of things. One is certainly from a marketing and awareness perspective, we've done a little bit more sort of outreach and education of what that looks like. You know, from a digital and paid media perspective, as well as sort of the signage that you see as you approach. We also changed the experience in the app to really facilitate that. So you'll see a different icon, and you'll see different different explanation to the consumer, sort of explaining that process. And you know, all in all, I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I thought coming into this, and you know, full disclosure, this is my background is really more from a consumer products perspective. And so coming into Chipotle and now spending the last year and a half or so in the space, I was just incredibly surprised at how quick both frankly the adoption and understanding that the consumer has about this process, and just their you know, desire for it has really exceeded our expectations. And so we see a lot of great results in terms of the digital mix of those stores and of those Chipotlanes, as well as the time. Like, you know, you're literally talking a matter of seconds. It's you know, you've taken a multi-minute journey through a traditional drive-through and really knocked it down to you know, sub 30, 20 second timeline, which is just incredible from a consumer experience perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron, I really want to talk to you about virtual concepts, ghost kitchens. You touched on it. You said you guys were already going that direction before the pandemic, but it feels like you can't. I mean, it just feels like that is just the story of the industry right now, is talking about ghost kitchens, virtual concepts. And I get it. I totally understand the potential in this. But tell me from your words, what potential you guys saw and what your strategy looks like for all that.
Sure. It's unbelievable how much buzz there is around ghost kitchens and virtual brands right now. And you know, our strategy day one was really to think about how might we have an asset light approach to getting food to our consumers. Like right now, 70% off premise to begin with. And so pickup and delivery make up, you know, a huge amount of what we do today. And without having our dining rooms even open, we saw, you know, this is clearly a part of the future. So when we think about a ghost kitchen strategy and how to optimize the assets, it's layering as much as you can, right? That can be handled within the operational platform from an ops standpoint, and also meeting the consumer in a way where they can access your brand in ways they couldn't before. So our strategy at Starbird is what we call a branded house, right? So we have different brands of foods. We've got original Starbird, we have Starbird wings, we have Starbird salads. We're launching Starbird bowls in a couple of weeks, and we've recently launched and are testing a concept called Garden Bird, which is our plant protein-based brand. On the consumer side, when the consumer is seeking a specific product, and then maybe they're looking on third-party delivery, they may be thinking, I want the best salad out there, right? Well, how are they going to find Starbird, who is known more for maybe tenders and for sandwiches than for salads? But it turns out that salads are, I think, one of our best products. Now with Starbird salads, it's actually our #1 category. If you can imagine a fried chicken restaurant whose #1 category is now salads, it says something about the ingredient quality, the price value. So now we're in a real estate battle that is not happening on the street. We're having a real estate battle that's happening virtually. And so consumers can go to DoorDash or an Uber Eats and have targeted algorithms to find the best salad or the best wings or the best bowls, right? And some brands are doing virtual by, creating a sub brand or something new and different. And I would say that the majority of brands are doing it in that way. You might say like the folks over at Doghouse, and I think those guys do a terrific job. And they've got some fun, edgy brands in and around different product categories. We found that the Starbird brand stands for something and means something to our guests and also introduces new folks to what we're doing. So we've decided to stick with Starbird being the headline and then a more of a focus on the way that these product categories differentiate. We're finding that we've got in our cloud kitchen in San Francisco, we're running 3 brands currently. We'll be adding the 2 more there soon. And we're actually doing more sales in the 2 sub-brands, being salads and wings, than we are, combined, than Starbird itself. So that's been a really great learning for us. And we continue to test and learn about, the best ways to function in that environment. The biggest challenge in that environment is it's a different economic model on all fronts. The cost, when you think about when 90 to 95% of your food is going to get a delivery charge, and not all of us can negotiate the rates of my friend John here on delivery, but even with ours being halfway decent, you've got to really rethink the way that your economic model looks. And so we're learning that, and it's a lot about return on investment. If it only costs us between 100 and 200 to open a ghost kitchen, what do we need to get to the bottom line quickly to make that a viable model?
Yeah, I want to build on something, Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
You were mentioning there. I think, in my experience so far, I think a lot of the focus of off-premise sort of started as like, how do we take what we're doing in store and then offer it from an off-premise perspective? And, for Chipotle, for example, being a highly customized business, if the first time you're experiencing a Chipotle is through a digital channel, it can be overwhelming. You may not know how, you don't see the ingredients in front of you. You don't know if you what does a black bean taste like versus a pinto or what have you. And so does that work well with these proteins that I'm selecting? And so I think, we've spent a lot of time thinking also about what are the raw materials that we have, and how do we think about that through a digital lens to ultimately make it easier for that guest, for that consumer. So you've seen things like we do pre-created entrees. And so these are things that are not available in our restaurants, but are available on our digital channels. And so we really kind of have looked at how can we understand more about what that consumer wants, needs, thinks about in that digital environment, and ultimately deliver that to them. And then also, what are the assets that you need to create in order to show that? How do you stand out on a marketplace? To I think the point that Aaron was also making there, in both in terms of your merchant page as well as the ingredients and the individual images that you have to really make that provide a point of differentiation and ultimately convert that customer as they come into the funnel on those marketplaces.
Yeah, that's a great segue into what I wanted to ask about too, as it relates to virtual concepts, as it relates to ghost kitchens. And Aaron, as you noted, suddenly it's this digital marketplace that everybody's competing on, and that's infinite. You could have thousands, and we do. I think, as I've heard, we've had several. Now there are several thousand virtual concepts out there, and ghost kitchens springing up everywhere. Of course, lots of opportunity, but could get very cluttered. And if I think of myself, if I want chicken wings, and I have usually 4 options around my house, and one of them I go to sometimes, one of the go to other times, but suddenly I have 85. Does it dilute what's going on? But the other thing I really am curious to get your guys' view on is, how do you create branding with this? Because, you know, a big part of the restaurant experience is the story you're telling through your branding. Again, going back to that experience, it's creating an emotional connection with your customer. And if you're just a virtual concept, no storefront that they've never interacted with, how can you do that? How do you create all this branding and the story of your brand that's going to help you kind of make this virtual concept fly? Aaron, how about we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, you know, the web presence. So first of all, so we have websites for all of our virtual brands. You could go to starbirdwings.com. You could go to starbirdSalads.com. We have social feeds. So our Instagram, we have a Starbird Wings experience, right? And so we're doing TikToks that are sharing and showing our products. So everything is living in a digital space, right? I mean, I dream about having the marketing budgets of a Chipotle. We've got a pretty small and scrappy team, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And it seems to be resonating, hence the sales being up, as I've shared. We're learning every day. It's testing and trying things in the digital space and communicating and putting out content and investing in, you know, we have our biggest spends is on marketing and technology in our company. And I'm a chef. This is a food-based company where I'm passionate about every ingredient that we serve every day. But I also realize we're operating and functioning in a new world. And so just getting the message out there. And we're even doing some branding work right now with the Culinary Edge team in saying, okay, here's what Starbird stands for, and how do we communicate what our brand promise is and mission, visions, and values internally and our external communication. And then how does that overarching, what gets passed down to our virtual brands, right? What resonates? I mean, we know it's about chicken, we know it's about positivity, we know it's about the product and quality, but the salad user is very different than the wing user, right? And how do we target their need states in our communication, messaging, social, photography? All the above are all key and critical things to tell the stories for the sub brands. It's great to see so many people and the entrepreneurialism that I'm seeing out there. We see a lot of speed bumps ahead, though, right? It's not like you can just put a brand up and start selling wings and win, right? There's a lot of thought that goes in behind this. There's a lot of operational, technical things to align. It's just a new world. And so just like in any competitive marketplace, those who are thinking about the guest need states, the operations, the business, the future are likely going to have that competitive advantage and be standing at the end of all this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good overarching point. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's, you know, this is sort of the endless aisle of choice at this point. And, you know, somewhat paradoxically, no, that's not how you say it.
Close enough.
Yeah, it's, you know, and I've spent a very long time in sort of the space of customization, and consumers don't necessarily want more choices. They want to be confident in the choices that they're making. And I think oftentimes as marketers, as business people, we try so many different things. And I think it starts like the choices that frankly we all need to make, regardless of how big or small our budgets or teams are about the allocation of our resources. You know, you can chase a million different directions, but I think you really need to sort of take a step back and think about what are the elements that you have, what makes you uniquely you, what is your brand, and where does it make sense to play, and where can you extend that, be it within your existing consumer base to possibly get an incremental transaction or an incremental trip, or you know, using it as Aaron was talking about as sort of master branding for other options. You know, I think each concept, each idea is going to have, you know, sort of different components that will ultimately come together to produce that success, or send you on a lot of different wild goose chases and you know, fray your focus in a way that I think is much more possible now than probably ever before.
I've got this great question from the audience. Aaron, I think this is going to be especially kind of directed to you. The question is, how do smaller brands and concepts not only compete, but also thrive on the digital platforms when they're going head to head with these much larger brands? Aaron, I imagine you have a thought about that.
Well, we're small, right? We're 6 restaurants. We'll be at 9 restaurants in January. We just passed a health department inspection today, which is good. It's hard to get those inspectors out there. Opening up our Campbell location in a week or two. Be nimble, right? In the digital space, you can test stuff really easily because you can turn it on and you can turn it off, right? And it's not necessarily all the A/B testing of typical tech companies, but there's an aspect of that. It's really hard to test something in brick and mortar street side and ramp it up and train a big team and put POP up and put this is something like, hey, let's try this. Let's see what happens. What can we learn? So small brands, be nimble, test things, right? Make sure that the why is answered, right? People need to understand why. And that in particular your internal folks, because they're like, I don't understand this. It's often complicated. But what we've also found is don't solve for the 5% who are the contrarians. Solve for the 95% who are on the road. You're going to get feedback. We get feedback like, why don't you sell this salad at Starbird and it's only on Starbird salads? Like, because we don't. Okay, like, love you. Here's a free salad. Come over to Starbird Salads and get it. Like, just but don't allow the naysayers and the I don't understands to stop you from being innovative. Okay. And I find that operations will often put their heels in because they don't feel empowered or have the tools to answer those questions. And so it's not their fault, right? It's our job to empower, give our team the tools to answer questions, make them feel comfortable and confident to address, the complications that innovation presents.
John, any perspective from the big brand perspective? Anything you're jealous that Aaron at his size has the luxury of doing that you wish you could do?
I mean, I think being nimble is one area, and I think Chipotle is certainly somewhat famous around our stage gate process, and there's a level of sort of organizational structure that while we are, I think certainly on the social and some of our digital channels, we are incredibly nimble and incredibly fast. If we're going to get something out and have it make a difference for us, there is a process for that. I didn't mention this before, but when the pandemic first started, we were talking about and we were in the process of bringing on Uber Eats, and I think it was like March 14th or something like that. We had a plan for the next 3 or 4 months to test in 100 stores and then 500 and so on, right? And I get a call from my senior leadership. How do we turn this on tomorrow? So I think in some ways, for sure, the sort of the nimble nature of sort of being small, being scrappy, is something that I am jealous of it at times. But certainly when the opportunity knocked, I think we demonstrated the ability to do that as well. So.
And to follow up, I mean, we have just as much respect for the discipline and the clarity that brands like Chipotle have proven, right? And there have to be, what does success look like? How do we measure success of what we're being nimble for and at every day is really important. So we look to brands like Chipotle who literally set the standard of that type of discipline. And we try and combine and balance those two things, because just trying stuff and throwing stuff at the wall is not the way to do it. It's everything that we test and try and are nimble with. We have a way to measure and think about what do we do with the information that we learn from doing that test or trial.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about starting with why. If you can answer that question, and I would add to that, be intentional. If you can have a why and you can be intentional with the things you're doing, I think those are critical elements of the raw materials of success.
Another quick question from the audience. Aaron, do you think your increase in sales is due to new guests or more frequency? And John, will ask you the question too, but Aaron, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Easy peasy.
all the above. Lot of new guests. We've won people because their way of interacting with restaurants has changed, and we have built greater frequency among those who use us before because we're focusing on their needs in ways that others can't meet them. So they're leaning into us a little bit more, offering new products, new things to keep it fresh for them. One thing I didn't mention before that I want to share is on off-premise, accuracy has become the number one issue. And I just want to say that, you know, we do a mediocre job at best, in my opinion, of where we need to be in and around accuracy, and the complexity of operating multiple brands only makes it more difficult to be accurate every single day. Obviously, when every order is customized at Chipotle, at least it's ingrained that you're having to read a ticket and build something per that. We have a lot of substitutions and changes and things that aren't necessarily the commonplace to the core, and that creates issues for our complexity. But we need to double down on that in our world, and think that that's with so few people being able to solve their problem in front of you right then and there. The importance of accuracy has never been greater.
That's a fantastic point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when you think about acquisition of new users, I mean, in many cases you're spending a lot of time and a lot of money trying to bring new users in, and even your existing users and loyal users, when they try your digital channel and they get something that they didn't want, or the drink's not included, or the side salad's not there, or whatever the case may be, that leaves, I'm sure everyone has experienced that. And you know, in that moment, that's incredibly frustrating. And you know, I've seen studies and numbers that range from 50 to 80% loss of over time of the value of that customer as a result of that poor experience. And so I think as an industry, and from reducing complexity operationally to ultimately leaning as hard as we can into getting accuracy right and ultimately making it right for the guest, is probably one of the things that'll differentiate and distinguish those that succeed from those that fail over time, as now many more customers have come into the delivery space than ever before.
I want to move into our roundtables here shortly, but I did just have one last question. I want to make sure that both of you guys get a chance to answer. What is it about the future that you're most excited about as it relates to off-premises, and what keeps you up at night? What's scary? What's the biggest challenge? And what's exciting? John, let's start with you.
Oh, this is like, we're in the, second or third inning of a complete transformation. I spent a long time in the toy business when when e-commerce first started, and it feels a little similar to that. I mean, I remember trying to get the Barbie teens to focus on e-commerce. It's like, no, we'll talk. Well, let's go to Walmart, or let's go to talk. And I think what's really happened is a huge shift in consumer behavior and consumer perception. And I think that creates an enormous amount of opportunity. And so I just think we're still so early in this evolution and in this game that really the future is there to be taken by whoever and whomever can ultimately create the best experiences for their guests. The thing that keeps me up at night, I think that there's a lot of sort of general structural challenges about what's happening in certainly what COVID has done to the economy, to restaurants, but even the broader economy as a whole, and what that actually means. I think in the short term, for sure, it's another wave of going to shut things down. Like those are the kinds of things that certainly in the off-premise space, again, create some level of opportunity, but present a much more broader risk and challenge, I think, to ultimately growing in any and all businesses.
Aaron, how about you?
I'm really optimistic and excited about the future, because I realize what we do now, and there's so many opportunities still. And we're working on 2021 planning and thinking about how our digital can be better, how to communicate with our guests, how do we even launch the last two brands that we've developed. There's so much excitement. We're moving into Southern California for the first time and opening in a new market. So there's just tremendous amounts of optimism and excitement for growth at Starbird. In terms of what keeps me up at night, it all comes down to the safety and health of our team, obviously of our communities also, but keeping our people safe every single day is the thing that, we meet every single day as a management team. And the first thing we ask about is, how is everyone doing? How's everybody's health? Is our team feeling good? Are there any challenges with any of our team members? What do we need to do to make sure that our team members are safe and healthy today? And we'll keep that focus on the forefront every single day. And I just hope that we're taking every single measure that we can to help ensure that.
That's great. Well, John, Aaron, guys, thank you so much for sharing your insights in this time. Thanks for spending some time with us talking about off-premises. With that, we are going to roll now into our roundtable discussions. As I mentioned before, these are really about conversation and networking. Spend some time getting to know each other. We'll start with having everybody, when you're in your roundtable, we'll start with having everybody go around and introduce yourselves. Again, please make sure that you respect everybody's right to speak and their opinion. I'm also very excited for this virtual meetup to welcome 3 other leaders to help us lead roundtables. So we are welcoming Otto Othman, the co-founder and CEO of Pincho, Karen Stutz, the CEO of Native Foods, and Aaron Lyons, the founder and CEO of Dish Society. They will be leading 3 roundtables, and Aaron and John will be leading 2 roundtables. Please also make sure to interact with the leader of your roundtable, because these are 5 incredible leaders with lots of information and insights to share as well. And then once we do about 30 to 45 minutes of roundtables, we'll just reconvene real quick at the end and say goodbye. So I'll go ahead and let my colleague Greg know to send us off into the roundtable discussions.